Hello, damnation. I come to you with a important weekend edition of the Danielle Moody Show. As more and more information comes out about the catastrophic flooding that caused now the deaths of 50 people, including many children, many girls that were at a camp alongside the Guadalupe River that rose 20 feet in an hour. The information coming out is devastating, but it is also critically eye opening that we understand how Donald Trump and Elon Musk's DOGE cuts contributed to the loss of life unnecessarily. Dear friends, let's get into it. You know what? What makes me so angry about the more information that comes out about the Texas flooding is that it didn't have to be this way. That 50 people are now dead, including many children who were at camp, summer camp, alongside a river. That because of a lack of early warnings and because of DOGE cuts to the National Weather Service, people did not receive the kind of alerts that were necessary overnight to warn them how quickly the flood was going to happen, how devastating the impact with the rain was going to be. And now we have reporting from the New York Times. For those folks that say, let's not politicize this moment, let's just offer our thoughts and prayers, this is not just an act of God. Right? This is an act of climate change. This is an act of ignorance and greed that has resulted in the unnecessary deaths of children. So the New York Times is reporting as floods hit, key roles were vacant at Weather Service offices in Texas. Some experts say staff shortages might have complicated forecasters' ability to coordinate responses with local emergency management officials. Here's the devastation. Crucial positions at the local offices of the National Weather Service were unfilled as severe rainfall inundated parts of central Texas on Friday morning, prompting some experts to question whether staffing shortages made it harder for the forecasting agency to coordinate with the local emergency managers as flood waters rose. Texas officials appeared to blame the Weather Service for issuing forecasts on Wednesday that underestimated how much rain was coming. But former Weather Service officials said the forecasts were as good as could be expected given the enormous levels of rainfall and the storm's unusually abrupt escalation. But folks, there is nothing that isn't unusual about the way that our weather patterns and weather systems have changed over the last 20 plus years. Scientists, climatologists, meteorologists have been warning about climate change while Donald Trump and the Republican Party has been going out on a full-on war of don't look up. In their minds, climate change doesn't exist. Oh, it's a hoax. And in Donald Trump's big, disgusting billionaire bill that was just signed into law, guess who got more money? Big oil and big fucking coal. Those are the places where Donald Trump decided to put money while cutting green industries and like incentives for green building. Incentives that are about not just giving people fucking electric cars. They're about lowering our carbon imprint. They're about lowering the damage that America is largely responsible for causing. The staffing shortages suggested a separate problem. Those former officials said the loss of experienced people who would typically have helped communicate with local authorities in the hours after flash flood warnings were issued overnight. The shortages are among the factors likely to be scrutinized as the death toll climbs from the floods. Separate questions have emerged about the preparedness of local communities, including Kerr County's apparent lack of a flood warning system. The county, roughly 50 miles northwest of San Antonio, is where many of the deaths occurred. The National Weather Service's San Angelo office, which is responsible for some of the areas hit hardest by Friday's flooding, was missing a senior hydrologist, staff forecaster, and meteorologist in charge. According to Tom Fahey, the legislative director for the National Weather Service Employees Organization, the union that represents weather service workers. The office's warning coordination meteorologist left on April 30th after taking the early retirement package the Trump administration used to reduce the number of federal employees, according to a person with knowledge of his departure. Folks, this is why everything is political. You know, as Americans, we have been able to just kind of, move about our lives, just making our way without having to think about all of the agencies and the people that allow us to move along with our lives basically carefree. Until now, when those positions are eliminated, those agencies are gutted, on top of the devastating cuts that are coming out of this horrible, disgusting bill that is now law. While I'm talking to you, guess what? Measles is at an all-time fucking high. And millions of people are about to lose their health insurance. All of these things are connected. People's votes matter. And you will say, well, callously, well, the people of Texas voted for this. The people of Texas are gerrymandered into hell. And if anyone should do anything about it, it is the families who have lost their children should sue. This is not the weather forecasters to blame. This is the Trump administration and Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who said, oh, Elon can take his chainsaw that he brought out on stage and wheel it around in a drug-induced haze. And those cuts that were supposed to be about fraud and waste actually cut critical jobs, critical infrastructure. And now people will say, well, we don't know if they were there, if those skilled workers were there overnight, if the coordination could have been better and tighter. Folks, we know exactly what the New York Times and others would be saying if this kind of devastation happened under the Biden administration, under Obama, anyone other than Donald Trump. The headlines would read, Trump cuts kill, because that's exactly what they have done. And we can't pretend that we weren't warned, because here, back in May, former National Weather Service leaders warn about loss of life from NOAA cuts. The 5 living former National Weather Service leaders wrote and released an open letter to the American people warning about the impact of staffing and program cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, saying their, quote, worst nightmare is that the cuts will lead to, quote, needless loss of life. Since the beginning of the year, more than 550 employees have left the National Weather Service, leaving it down 10% of its staffing levels ahead of hurricane season and the busiest time of year. And the proposed budget that we know that was passed, released by the White House, will cut NOAA, the parent agency of the National Weather Service, by nearly 30%. Virtually eliminating NOAA's research functions for weather, limiting ocean data observations, and decreasing funding for new satellites, they said. This isn't an act of God. This was an act of greed. This was an act of Donald Trump and Elon Musk going in and cutting critical jobs and gutting critical agencies. Also, they can sit atop more money. It is not an accident that this happened. Donald Trump and Elon Musk and this MAGA administration have blood on their hands. 50 people are dead, including children, and more are going to die. Why? Because it's July, and we are just getting ready for hurricane season. And we know that each hurricane season that we have is worse than the last. And what else did Donald Trump do? Cut FEMA. Oh, those states can, quote unquote, fend for themselves. This is only going to get worse. Donald Trump, which is exactly what he is, Trump just signed that disgusting bill, which is essentially a death sentence for millions. And they applauded. They chanted USA, USA, USA. I wonder if they will do that at the funeral of these young girls. My God, there is nothing more political than what is happening in this moment. And if you are not angry, you are not paying attention. The people have got to take action because our leaders, our representatives have failed us. I say this every single week. It is time to shut this country down. We need a national strike. More people are going to lose their lives unnecessarily because we can't satiate the greed of the fucking rich. It is time that the people recognize that they still have power, but we are running out of time. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the weekend edition of the Danielle Moody Show. I will see you all tomorrow, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern for Democracy Ish, and then at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Danielle Moody Show. As always, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. Be well.